What's going on, everybody? My name's Spence,
And I'm Mitch.
and we're two brothers that really love King of the Hill, and we're reviewing every single episode in the series. And of course, we have to start off with the pilot, the episode that started it all. And in terms of a pilot, I think this is about one of the best pilots for any TV show, just in terms of how it sets everything up for the characters.
I think that's a great point to make because a lot of TV shows tend to either make fun of their pilot or forget that it ever happened. But not the case in King of the Hill. It's actually one of my favorite episodes, and there's some great lines in it. And like my brother said, it introduces the characters perfectly.
Yeah, because pretty much all the characters' personalities are pretty much consistent with the entire series, and that's a very rare thing for a pilot. But one thing I'm surprised that you said is that the pilot is one of your favorite episodes. Like you say, it's like probably like one of your. I think it's a great episode, but I wouldn't say it's like one of my favorites.
I probably have about 10 to 20 favorite episodes.
Oh, okay, that's fair. That's going to be a lot. But yeah, the pilot kicks off with the guys. We get our first glimpse of the guys working over Hank's truck. And we have the famous "fix it again, Tony" line. I don't know why that always stuck with me. For whatever reason, that stupid throwaway line at the start is one of the things that always stuck with me about the pilot.
I know what's wrong with it. It's a Ford. You know what they say Ford stands for, don't you? It stands for fix it again, Tony.
And anytime I see a Fiat, that's the first thing I think about.
Like Dale saying "fix it again, Tony." So this episode itself, right, we don't get a ton of time with the guys, right? He doesn't spend too much time building up Hank's relationship with his friends, but it's mostly about his family and specifically with his relationship with Bobby, which we find out very quickly is rather strained, right? He's listening to some off-color, I wouldn't even call it music. It's like sound effects or whatever. He just listen to sound effects, and Hank can't understand what the hell's going on. I mean, to be fair, I can't understand what's going on. I mean, I listened to some weird music as a kid, but nothing that weird.
Just for the people who grew up playing sports that their dad wanted them to play.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
All the dreaded car rides to those games that you didn't want to be there for.
Yeah, our dad definitely drove us to plenty of sporting events that we didn't want to be. We didn't want to be at. Yeah, neither of us really took to like any kind of team sports.
Sports, no.
Yeah. I mean, I liked baseball, but I never liked it enough to be like, oh my God, I'm going to play baseball for the rest of my life or anything like that. But I mean, living here in Canada, a big difference between Texas. And that's one of the things that's interesting about King of the Hill specifically because in the time that the show was made, very few other, particularly cartoons, really leaned into its geographical location. Right, The Simpsons famously is just every town, any town.
That's right, yeah.
USA, but for its time, they really, really leaned into that Texas angle. I think it's something that makes it special. Definitely makes it stand out.
Something that we all remember, for sure.
But here for us in Canada, it was hockey rather than baseball or football. Getting drugged to, and God, I hated hockey so much. I hated those pads and getting up at 5 a.m. in a cold rink.
Like goddamn ice.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a fan of hockey either.
Yeah.
For the record.
We get the first real movement here in the plot when poor Bobby gets nailed by baseball, giving him a real bad black eye. And on the way home, Hank decides that he needs to stop at the Megalomort to get a couple hardware supplies. And this scene in particular, I'm really happy that I got my brother here because one of the things about my brother and I is that, yeah, we're similar in a lot of ways, but we're also very different people. And my bro is real handy, but I am not. And I had no idea what a tap and die was until you told me.
I had to explain to him what a tap and die was.
And I think you should explain to anybody else who might know what it is. So what is a tap and die?
A tap and die is for creating threads. The tap is for creating interior threads, and the die is for creating exterior threads.
But another thing I want to say about this scene in particular, he really nailed the incompetent retail employee on the head. It's only gotten worse. As the years have gone on, it's like they just get worse and worse. They get less and less competent. We get the plot really moving along here when some people in town overhear Hank berating Buckley for not knowing where Tap and Die and WD-40 is. And due to Bobby's black eye, some people start speculating that maybe Hank is not just a hothead, doesn't just have a bad temper, he's actually an active danger to
An abusive
people. Yeah, an
father.
abusive father. And I guess it's a small town in Texas, so word travels fast, although in the modern era, someone would just take a picture of Hank freaking out.
And it would be all over your Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, in this scenario, word travels fast, and a concerned citizen ends up bringing a social worker into the program who is obviously designed to be a foil to Hank in many ways. I do really like here, they definitely clearly loved the animation, or they put enough detail into the animation that you can tell exactly what he's doing in the truck, what exactly he's fixing.
Yep, you can also tell that it's a V8 by the amount of spark plugs.
So yeah, obviously someone really paid attention. But now we finally get the social worker coming to visit the Hill residence, and Hank loses his temper just at the most inappropriate time when the social worker is coming in the door. And then he starts to interview Hank about why his son has a black eye, and he just pushes his buttons something fierce, right?
This is my favorite line in the episode, is Hank's speech.
Oh, when I think of all my hard-earned tax dollars going to pay a bunch of little twig boy bureaucrats like you, it just makes me want to... Oh, God, it just...
Oh, his speech against the twig boy bureaucrats and his money. I mean, there's a lot of people that's the way they feel. And I think it's definitely fair to say that this guy's wasting everybody's time, right?
Absolutely.
Hank is not a abusive father by any stretch of the imagination.
We find out about Hank's narrow urethra.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
in the pilot.
That's right. Hank's narrow urethra is officially mentioned in the pilot, which is obviously a big part about his character. And it shows why he loves Bobby so much, because it was such a struggle for them to conceive, which definitely becomes a bigger part of Hank and Peggy's relationship later. It's pretty clear that this guy has got a personal vendetta against Hank.
It's a pretty relatable thing for a lot of men out there to get to the of anger where your brain malfunctions and you can no longer speak.
I know I would definitely feel Hank's pain if some social worker was in my house like this.
You don't often get the chance to kick someone out of your home.
That's true, yeah. I actually don't think I've ever done it, now that you say it. I've never actually kicked somebody out of this house.
I kicked a alarm salesman out of my house one time.
We also get introduced very briefly to John Redcorn, and we can see that something is going on with him and his wife. That's established clearly, and we can see even further that we see Joseph, who is clearly mixed race, and both Dale and Nancy are white. Eventually, things culminate with the social worker trying to come and take Bobby away, or at least coax Bobby into coming with him and coming to a foster home. And Bobby is obviously smart enough not to listen to this guy, right? And Hank chases him out. And,
dog barking and everything.
And characteristic style. And then we finally see this bureaucrat get a little bit of comeuppance here when he has to face his boss, because he recommends that the state take away the kid, even though he can't prove that there's any violence. But it becomes pretty clear that this guy's got some sort of personal vendetta against Hank. He doesn't like Hank on a fundamental level, and this guy can figure that out instantly, right? And he embarrasses him because the guy doesn't even talk to the baseball coach, because there obviously would be witnesses at a baseball game if Bobby got hit, and he never thought to ask any of them in the first place. But a curveball here where the boss of the social workers phones the Hill residence and tells Bobby that they're calling off the investigation, and the social worker was sent back to LA. And rather than telling his parents, he just says that nope, nothing ever happened. Wrong number.
Wrong number.
If you guys are watching this and you are from Texas, is this a Texas thing? Putting bacon grease on your bacon sandwich over mayonnaise?
Not only that, but just making a sandwich with pure bacon.
Yeah, just making a sandwich with pure bacon. I've never seen that before, and I wonder if it's a Texas thing. But yeah, I don't know if you can really blame Bobby, because honestly, if I were in his situation, I'd probably have done the same thing to my dad to mess with him. So Bobby uses his newfound powers to make Hank life miserable, and basically toy with him, knowing that Hank won't do or can't do anything because the threat of the state taking away his kid is looming over his head. So eventually Bobby's plan gets busted when I guess the boss follows up or some shit. Kind of random that he would follow up on this case, but whatever, he does. And tells the Hill residents that, hey, we stopped this investigation like a week ago. just making sure everything's A-okay here. And yeah, Bobby gets busted big time. And I personally think like they really handle this the right way as parents, right? I think Hank really handles this in an appropriate way. He has the initial response like, I'm going to kill him. And you can't blame him, but he handles this the right way. It doesn't come down on Bobby too hard for his shenanigans. And then, yeah, that's pretty much the opening episode. It ends with them having a nice father-son moment, a little bit of horseplay or whatever, and the social worker sees them hitting each other and thinks that Hank's beating Bobby. But, yeah.
But we also see Hank's struggles with communication, which is...
yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're 100% right.
When Hank has so many redeeming qualities, but his struggling with communication is definitely a detriment.
Yeah, he's so closed off. He's so repressed. He's so reserved that it 100%, is a struggle for him. And we see a little glimpse of that in the pilot and obviously throughout the series.
Well, oh, that's a hell of a weird sound. I never made that before.
But yeah, let's just wrap it up with our final thoughts here. One of the things I think that, again, we talked about the pilot, is that it sets up a lot of the main characters in the show, and a lot of them are meant to push various areas. For example, Luann is meant to push his boundaries around being uncomfortable around sex. Bobby obviously pushes his boundaries around nonconformist, untraditional views in society. Bill pushes his boundaries on his patriotism and loyalty. Yeah, and then Boomhauer. I think it's just Boomhauer. It doesn't, Boomhauer is just there. I don't think he really is there to be a foil to anybody. He's just there for the gags.
Yeah, Bill makes you wonder why Boomhauer is friends with everyone. I always wondered.
Yeah,
he seems like the odd duck out a lot of the time.
He definitely does. And, maybe because at the end of the series, they reveal his, and we will maybe talk about this later, but they reveal what his job is. And maybe he was supposed to be there, like, as part of his job to be embedded, to be around those specific people. There's a theory that maybe Boomhauer was there for Dale. They needed somebody to keep tabs on him, basically. But who knows, right? That's another thing that we mentioned is how the characters feel realistic, and they feel like human beings with actual struggles that are relatable to our everyday lives. So overall, for the pilot, I think it may not be the funniest episode out there, but it perfectly sets the stage and captures the essence of King of the Hill. And not only that, it really paints the picture for the type of humor we're going to see in the show. A little bit slower burn type of humor based more around the wit and the writing, rather than maybe the situation the characters get into or crazy stupid things happening to them. Overall, I give the pilot an 8 out of 10. What would you say, Mitch?
I'd give it a 9.
Okay, so you give it a little bit higher score. My personal funniest moment from the episode is the tap and die in WD-40. That is a pretty classic line. And especially Mike Judge's delivery on the tap and die and WD-40 has always been perfect.
I'm trying to buy a tap and die and some WD-40 and get out of this godforsaken store.